Hello, my name is Ted Hulsy. I'm Vice President of Marketing at eFolder and your host for today's event. Welcome to our eFolder Partner Chat Series. This webinar series brings together leading eFolder partners for business-oriented discussions. Today's topic is how to design a business continuity plan for clients. Today we are joined by Steven Thom, President and CEO of Thom Infotech. Before we go through today's agenda, let's cover a few housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded. The recorded version of the webinar will be made available on eFolder's YouTube channel. We will also make copies of the slides available to those who are registered for the event. With over 145 people registered for today's session, we have put all participants in listen-only mode. You can enjoy the audio portion of today's event by either streaming it on your computer or by dialing in over the phone. Questions are strongly encouraged throughout. We have planned a special Q&A section at the end of today's discussion, but you may submit your questions as we go along, and we will try to address them on the fly. Okay, let's look at the agenda. Oh, and I'm off on the wrong slide, but all right, here we go. Here's our agenda. Today's presentation follows a logical flow. After introducing our partner guest, we'll discuss the importance of designing a business continuity plan for clients. We will then go to an interactive back and forth discussion with Steven about how he puts together a business continuity strategy for clients, in which we'll cover what questions to ask, factors to consider, and tips and tricks. And finally, we will open the floor to your questions from everyone in the audience. Now let me introduce our partner guest. Steven Thom is president of Tom Infotech, a managed IT services firm in the Chicago suburbs. Steven has experienced a business disaster prior to starting Tom Infotech in 2000, which has informed all subsequent client conversations regarding business continuity. Tom Infotech employs 6 people and serves the entire Chicago metro area. Steven, thanks for joining us and welcome.
Thanks, Ted.
Okay. Well, so why don't we just first give you a chance to talk a little bit about your company, the history of the firm, how you guys got started, where you're focused today.
Thank you. Well, first of all, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. Like a lot of you, I started out my company as a one-man shop back in 2000. Job changes, office politics, things finally got to me, and I thought, why not do this myself? So in the entrepreneurial fit, I started a business. And things went well, grew fairly steadily, started hiring people around 2003, 2004 timeframe, and have now grown to our current size. As the slide mentioned, I received a call, pretty much a telemarketer call about managed services. I bought the RMM platform in question, I bought a PSA, and we started offering managed services. Bit of a slow start, but around 2011 we really picked up our pace, and now all of our clients are managed to some degree, and many of them fully fixed fee managed IT services. And as the slide says, we have some clients in medical and retail, finance, hospitality. You know, we're all over the map. We've elected not to try to pick a particular vertical. It wouldn't be bad if one of them started to emerge as our primary vertical, because there's always some value in having that experience flow through. But you know, we're very happy and on a growth trajectory going forward.
Great. Steve, could you talk a little bit about your transition to managed services? I mean, what was the most difficult part of the transition?
I had a really, really difficult competitor, and that competitor was the old me. The old me who would pretty much do anything for anybody for little or nothing, and then forget to bill about it or bill for it down the road. It was terrible. The biggest transition was getting clients to realize the value of paying for recurring services. They were used to Steve caring about their stuff without getting paid to care, and that had to change eventually. So one by one, the majority of our clients did make the switch. A number of legacy clients didn't go along with us, and that was okay. We usually would hand them off to another local provider to keep them in that break-fix world.
Okay, great. And then what are some of the other software tools that you've standardized upon, I mean, in your service stack, either from RMM or PSA, to help you make this transition?
Well, we purchased Enable in 2008 and have continued to use it ever since. So we're very big fans of Enable. We also picked up Autotask as well in 2008, and we remain loyal to Autotask to this day. We've done pretty much what most of the other guys have done. We've gotten accounts with the big four distributors. We are Microsoft partner, Cisco partner, you know, all of the major stuff. If you're a managed IT provider, we're probably very similar.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move along. Good introduction to your firm. Let's kind of, you know, just talk for a second about, you know, why having the business continuity conversation with clients is so critical. I mean, so let me just give kind of my you know, perspective and eFolder's perspective on it. Of course, we are a company that supplies you know, cloud services and software as a service that play critical roles in helping partners deliver a business continuity solution to clients. So we, of course, have a selfish interest in all of our partners being successful in doing this. But I think when you look, if you've made the full transition to managed services, I think it becomes fairly obvious fairly quickly for any MSP that business continuity is kind of a foundational component of your service offering. When stuff goes wrong, and stuff will go wrong, when there are everyday disasters or major disasters, you as the MSP are, of course, on the hook to remediate whatever occurs. I mean, you're on the hook to safeguard the data of your clients. You're on the hook to remediate and get them back up and running and help them do a fast recovery. And if you haven't properly configured the software and services and don't have your technicians properly trained, that can be a you know, a very cumbersome, costly experience that involves a lot of labor, a lot of black eyes, a lot of maybe service issues if you don't have all your ducks in a row. Now, it's not always simple, of course, to get clients to step up to a higher level of readiness and resiliency in terms of how they have their business organized. But I think today's conversation is all about how to have that conversation. What are the right questions to ask? What are the right areas to probe in? What are the right conversations to have with a business owner who you're you know, either proposing a solution to or trying to convince to step up to a higher level of readiness. But over time, I think one thing you can definitely say is that if you've got proper business continuity deployed for your clients and a business continuity plan for each client, your labor costs when something does go wrong are going to be a lot lower. Your profits are going to be higher, and you're going to have a much stickier relationship with your clients. Because what you're guaranteeing is not necessarily just technical readiness. You're guaranteeing, you know, productivity for their business, and you're guaranteeing that they're going to be able, whatever their mission is in life, whether it's a medical practice or an orthodontist office or a lawyer or an accountant at tax time, you're guaranteeing that they can go out there and achieve their mission using technology. So I think it's important as we're exploring this to not be overly technical, but to really focus on the outcomes. And the outcome, in our view, is ensuring productivity for businesses that we serve jointly. You know, it just so happens that Tom Infotech actually came to eFolder as a partner just a couple of months back, 6 months ago, I think, or so, maybe slightly longer than that. But you came to us through your use of Veeam and eFolder's BDR service for Veeam. Can you talk about how you discovered eFolder and how we got started?
Sure. First of all, we started doing backup and for our clients, you know, pretty much early on and back in the day with tape drives and backup exec and Windows backup and things like that. And as the cloud progressed and as bandwidth became readily available, some of these options opened to us. And for a long time, we were a StorageCraft partner, and we still are. We still have a few seats out there up and running. But it was a little more manual process, but it was trustworthy, and we loved it, and we were quite happy. We eventually tried Datto for a little while. Datto turned out to be rather expensive, a workable platform, but just not very cost effective. So we started looking, and we kind of were on the hunt, and we had a very specific list of things it had to do for us. And once we discovered Veeam, and I don't know why we didn't discover it sooner, we knew it was out there, we just never gave it a look. My guys just walked in the door beaming at like 5:30 at night saying, it just works. In fact, it's their motto, it just works. So we knew that through some of the lunch and learns with eFolder that it was an option. That eFolder was one of the approved offsite providers, the BDR providers for Veeam, and we bid on that in a hurry. And by the way, guys, when you hear of these lunch and learns, go and have a steak. It's really a good meal at a good time, and you will get some really great pricing on the product. But that's an extra commercial for you, Ted.
Well, we appreciate that. And just so everybody is kind of aware, I mean, just one thing that makes eFolder's approach to BDR and business continuity rather unique in the market is we give partners choice. We support 5 different flavors of image-based backup software. We support Acronis, Aperture from Dell, StorageCraft, Shadow Protect, as Steve just mentioned, Replibit, and Veeam. So all of these different flavors of software are available, and the way we price and package them and bundle them in each product line varies from line to line. But in general, we bring the cloud, we bring the ability to back up or replicate and recover the client environments in the eFolder cloud, and then in some cases we bundle the software or components of the software in one low everyday price for the partner, and then we sell it to you on a wholesale basis. And so that's something that makes us rather unique. I mean, if you contrast us to, say, Datto, Steve took a look at Datto or maybe used Datto a bit. I mean, we give partners choice, so you can pick from these 5 different flavors of software. And really, if your technicians love some of the unique feature sets of these softwares, that's great, and then you can plug it into the eFolder cloud. And that's just, just a brief schematic of how a Veeam environment works. You'd be running Veeam locally to protect the virtual hosts, and usually backing up those jobs to a SAN locally, and then at the same time you would send a backup job to the eFolder cloud, where we're running a piece of the Veeam software suite, which is called Veeam Cloud Connect, in our compute cloud, and then all of that data is being stored in the eFolder, what we call the storage cloud. I mean, it's all in one data center, but logically these are different pieces. The compute cloud, the storage cloud, and the recovery cloud are logically different components of the overall solution. But by doing that, you get, in the case of Veeam, it's a software solution designed for backing up virtualized environments and purpose built for that. And then, but you have to have the offsite component, and that's where eFolder comes in. You back it up to us, and then if there is a really massive disaster that wipes out a client's location or makes it inoperable, or there's an ice storm or a power outage or whatever case may be, you're able to then, in a worst case scenario, recover data from the eFolder cloud or in the eFolder cloud, as the case may be. So with that, that's how we've come together as 2 companies working together to deliver end-to-end business continuity to clients. And let's get into the conversation of, just talking about, the business continuity conversation with clients. Steve, if you would, could you talk a little bit about that? In the bio, there was mention of a disaster that kind of informed your thinking on this topic. Can you share a little bit about that, if you would?
Absolutely. So it was 1999, I believe, 98 or 99. I was working for a construction equipment rental company in the Chicago area. I had transitioned to the role eventually of division IT manager for about a 4-state region, I believe, 5 states. And things were going along well until about 2 o'clock in the morning. My phone rang at home, and the call was, hey, there's been a big fire at the office, so don't come in tomorrow. So, of course, I got dressed, and I went in right then and there because I knew what it meant. There were deliveries to be made the next day. There's a service department that has to run. There's so much that needs to take place. So I got there, and everything was still smoldering, and it was the front of the office that was destroyed, meaning the computer systems. And back in the 90s, the computer systems weren't that elaborate, but that's everything that got nuked. I mean, everything was melted into heaps. The tapes, the pile of tapes on top of the accountant's PC were a big molten heap. It was bad, and we were lucky. We were able to recover his data through drive savers, but I had to put together a plan like instantaneously so that we could deliver equipment the next morning. We could get remote connectivity to our AS400 host in another state. We could get some office space and computers, and all of this as quick as possible. And by the end of the following day, we had almost all of this in place. It just took a little longer to get the office space aligned. And so by the day after that, we were up and running and functioning and creating contracts and everything. So that changed everything for me. Every time I look at an office space that one of my clients is considering renting, one of the first things I do is look up to see if there are sprinkler heads. Never would have thought of it prior to that, but just the extent of that disaster, because there were no sprinklers, it makes it a very different conversation.
Now, you guys, sounds like you were able to bounce back in this case pretty well. Did you get lucky, or are you just really good at doing work? When you were on the IT staff, did you just, through an abundance of fast, hard work, you guys were able to recover? I mean, were there things you could have done to be more prepared for that particular disaster?
There definitely were. I mean, the fact that the only backup system was done on the accountant's PC. I mean, again, this was the 90s. We weren't that computerized. So the backup was being done locally and was not being carried offsite. That was dumb decision number one, which, you know, leads directly to our conversation about cloud-hosted BDR. The other thing is it was an AS400 remote connectivity solution, so, you know, that there was no monster server with reams and reams of data to back up, and you know, we were lucky in that regard. But if we were the home office, it would have been disastrous for the company. So it really does pay to do some planning.
Okay, and so let's kind of turn our attention to your existing clients today, and you know, how do you articulate the importance of business continuity planning to clients?
Well, first of all, I'll point out that on the slide, business continuity planning is not capitalized. And that's good, because I'm not an official business continuity planner. I've not obtained certifications in that field. That is an entire discipline of IT, which is just fantastic. I've investigated it. I've considered going down that road as a company, but stuck with the managed IT services instead. But I've begun to have this conversation with every client based on my experience, number one, but also into that research I did on business continuity planning. So one of the more important features of this kind of planning, though, is entirely and utterly selfish. And I think all of the IT providers in the audience need to think about this. And Ted, you did touch on it earlier. The fact that I am on the hook, these are the kinds of things that keep IT managers and IT providers awake at night. You know, what if there's a disaster? Those few times I knew that for a 24-hour period we didn't have a backup for a particular client, that the previous solution completely failed, and things like that. I mean, those were gut-wrenching, and you know that feeling in the pit of your stomach when you have a disaster like this, when you're not 100% certain that everything works. So for goodness sake, you know, let's get rid of the chaos. We're IT providers. We're not running you know, a high-intensity emergency department here. We can run a very casual clinic and do all of our work ahead of time and do all of our planning ahead of time and make sure all of our clients are set up and operating in the same fashion with the same solutions that are documented and understood by all of our staff, and do it for your sake, because if it's good for you, like it's good for me, it's probably going to be really good for the client, because we don't want chaos and we don't want uncertainty and we don't want surprises. We want everything to just work, and when everything stops working for some reason out of our control, we want to have a plan B, and we want to know that plan B is reliable. And I mean, have you found it's hard? I mean, can you talk a little bit about, so how do you price and package and bake a business continuity service
into your overall managed service offering?
Great question. First of all, it's mandatory. One of the things we pointed out earlier was that, I used to use StorageCraft and now I use Veeam. If I still had clients on bare metal servers, I would still be using StorageCraft and I would be backing them up to the eFolder cloud. But we have decided that all of our clients need to be virtual. So we've standardized on Hyper-V, and all of our clients are running a host server with guest operating systems. And this simplifies disaster recovery dramatically because the lack of bare metal restore problems, everything just restores directly back to Hyper-V, and everything works just fine.
And then how do you, how is it, in terms of your overall, maybe talk at kind of a higher level, your managed service offering, how is it priced and packaged? Is it by the employee? What's included, what's not? Do you have a la carte add-ons? How does that manifest itself?
Our philosophy on managed services is that we're kind of like a private school. If you want a better outcome, you send your kid to a private school, but it's going to cost a little more, and your kid's going to probably have to wear a uniform and look just like all the other kids. But if you do that, your kid will get a better education and have a better outcome at the end of the day. So we look at managed IT services as a bit of a, you have to do it our way, and you have to subscribe to all of our services. There are cases where a client has a switch or a firewall that is on our B list of approved vendors, but otherwise, we can't be scrambling around fixing 20 different firewalls and 12 different backup scenarios. All of our clients have to use our solution, and we're very good at explaining that to them. It's in our best interest, and it's in their best interest. We've done all the vetting. We know that they've made an investment in whatever it is they're currently using, but that's one of the ones we rejected. We have the best in the business, and we know exactly how to use it, and all of our staff are trained on it. So that's the nature of the conversation. In terms of managed services, then, our plans are essentially two plans. One is a fully fixed fee managed services plan, which includes all of the labor they need for help desk and things like that. Projects and outside of business hours are excluded from that contract. And then a stripped down version of that, and by stripped down, all I mean is it doesn't include the labor. All the labor is via prepaid block hours. Otherwise, everybody gets all the same solution. They all get the same DNS filtering. They all have the same firewall. They all have the same antivirus from our dashboard, our patch management, our email security filtering, all of those things, all of the things that make them reliable and all of them that make them not chaotic are in both of our plans. The only real choice here is whether you want to take the gamble on the labor or whether we want to take the gamble.
Okay, and then so it's a conversation about better outcomes, and can you talk about kind of first just how do you find new clients? How do you engage with them in the and sell to them and convince them that, hey, taking this higher road or taking this more premium approach is going to lead to better outcomes for you? How do you go about that process?
Great question. First of all, by our size at 6 people, one would be safe to guess that we have not yet exploded. We have not yet done a great deal of outbound marketing, and we are about to take off on an outbound marketing push. We have it slated for first quarter of next year. We're just getting all of our ducks in a row in the office first and ready to go. And I'm sorry, I forgot the rest of your question.
Well, so today, so you're gearing up to increase the amount of client acquisition, because it sounds like your services are well defined and you're ready to go. But just today, with your existing clients, when you bring on a new client, if they're brand new and not somebody, say, migrating from kind of the old way you used to do things, how do you talk about and how do you have the conversation about better outcomes?
Yes, sorry about that. Okay, so what you have to do is you have to assume that you're going to get less of a success rate when you're having those conversations. So, for instance, I received a call today that was a referral from another client, and one of the first things I try to do is rule them out, meaning we don't just take anything that comes along. We're very picky about our clients because they do have to all dress alike in order to make them, make it sane for my staff to support them and easy to document and so forth. So the conversation often starts out as, are we sure that they're a good fit for us, and are we sure that they have the sentiment to pay for managed IT services? I had a referral last week for a potential client. I was kind of excited, 15 users. I had a phone call, and not long into that phone call, I determined that my monthly recurring services fee was roughly what they spent over the last 2 years. Now, they're getting a horrible outcome, but they were just appalled that anyone would expect them to pay that kind of money, although they've talked to 2 or 3 other providers and they were getting roughly the same numbers from all the providers. So these folks just don't value IT as much as they need to. So that's also another prerequisite. Whenever we bring on or entertain a new client, they just can't view technology as a necessary evil. It has to be integral to their business. Tech-dependent is one thing. Tech-centric is quite another. We'll take tech-dependent, but we really love tech-centric, meaning their business runs on their technology. They don't rely on it as a peripheral item. I mean, it is their business. Their business is delivered via technology. So they are very keen on doing the right things and spending the right money and getting the right outcome because they deliver technology to their clients.
And what, there's a question just came in on the Q&A log. Are you at liberty to share kind of what you roughly charge per user, rough ballpark?
Yeah, and by the way, that goes back to one of your questions. How's the pricing done? When it's fully fixed fee, it tends to be per user, and we generally settle in the 150 to 175 per person range. When we back out of that plan and do the partial fixed fee plan, now we're usually going by device, and we have a central fee that we calculate for all of their critical infrastructure, NAS drive switches, firewalls, battery backups, anything with an IP address. We'll put in our dashboard so that we can monitor it and determine the connectivity and whatever else we can glean from it. So that is one kind of a nucleus fee that we charge, and that varies based on the client. That could be $50 and that could be $500. It just depends on complexity. And then we'll charge per server and per workstation. So we might charge between $15 and $50 per PC, depending on the client, and between $50 and $150 for the server. Those folks will then prepay their labor in block hours. And we much prefer to have that money in our bank, and we are really not fond of aged receivables.
Gotcha. So, and then another question came in from John when you're talking about kind of selling the MSP vision. John says, does Steven have any tips for having the MSP conversation with existing break-fix clients?
Yeah, John, great question, and I think you probably identified with me earlier when I said that my worst competitor was the old me. It is tough. A lot of your clients will sympathize with you that your lifestyle needs to improve, and if they're used to seeing you nights and weekends and not getting bills from you for weeks at a time, they understand that it's not good for you to be burning out the candle on both ends. So you need a practice that makes it sane for you to run a business, sane for you to attract talent and hire and retain employees. And the only way to do that is to have a bundle of services that you offer all of your clients, and you keep all the variation to an absolute minimum so that it's sane for you. As far as having that conversation with a client, frankly, a lot of your clients won't bite on it. They've got you, the old you, because that's all they can really handle. Maybe they're not as tech-centric or tech-dependent. They just have to endure technology in order to deliver gravel or something along those lines. And you probably won't have a lot of success with some of those clients, so I would encourage you to gain new clients that are fully managed or partially managed. And as you do that, you can start keeping track of your annual spend from all of your clients and draw a line somewhere on that spreadsheet. and start meeting with the clients below that line and encouraging them to move up, or inviting them to work with another local IT company for which you can establish relationships with some of the break-fix vendors in your area, learn whether they're capable or not, and hand them some clients and help them build their business with clients that are no longer a good fit for yours.
Okay, well, great. So let's turn the conversation, go a little deeper on just the business continuity conversation. So when you take on a new client, can you talk a little bit about the questions you pose, and I mean in an assessment or an initial assessment? What are some of the things you're looking for to determine what the minimum standard or the right standard is you're going to put in for a client to make sure they have business continuity?
Great question. First of all, we really want to determine how much they value their data, how much critical data they store locally. Some of the clients we entertain are already in the cloud. We have a conversation about that data as well. But if we find a client has servers, one of the first things we ask is, are you backing up your data? And when they answer yes, we ask them, are you sure, and have you tested it? And we almost never get a yes on those questions. We usually get that uncertain look, that this is the thing that keeps me awake look from the principal in the room. And by the way, don't have this conversation with underlings. Make sure the right decision makers are in the room. You don't want the people in the room with you trying to make the sale for you. So just a tip on sales, make sure the decision makers are part of that conversation, because they're the ones that tend to have the uncertainty, and they're the ones that don't sleep at night. So it's really important that that party understands that you care about risk, and you care about their risk, and the risk it poses to you as their potential IT vendor. And it's all about identifying and mitigating risk anywhere you can find it, and making everything smooth and quiet and, not chaotic.
And do you get kind of into the nitty-gritty of what their tolerance for downtime is, or what the cost of downtime is going to be in their particular case?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen over the years a lot of methodologies on trying to use pricing calculators to put a price tag on that service, or on that loss of service. And I think I found over the years it's better to just talk to the principal and ascertain from him how critical it is. For instance, I've talked to people who said, it wouldn't bother me at all. We could go a few weeks without it. Or, well, if there's a big tornado that rips up our business, we're not going to be in business anymore anyway. And they don't tend to realize, and I'll go ahead and start explaining to them, well, you'll still have to close out your financials, you'll still have to pay your employees, you'll still have some vendors and collections that you need to take care of. There's a whole lot more to running a business than in a disaster than you realize. So I go through all of the possibilities and all of the disaster scenarios I've encountered, even some of the least likely things you could ever consider. But there were businesses in Canada that couldn't go to work for months after that major train wreck that went through that town and just torched an entire town. I mean, just tragic events like that, toxic spills, things like that. Most people don't consider what might happen, and those are the conversations I tend to have. And usually that differentiates me from whoever else is in there making the pitch. Most people start talking, antivirus, so tell me what's wrong. Oh, it took that guy 2 hours to fix that problem? My technicians would have fixed it in 1 hour. I mean, those kind of conversations go nowhere. I'm more inclined to go with the conversation about the outcomes. I think delivering a quality outcome to your client includes making sure that they can stay up and running even in the face of a major disaster. And sometimes I'm the only one really talking about that to these small business clients.
Right, and then how far do you go? I mean, I guess in terms of putting together a plan, do you go beyond? I mean, do you help them draft contingency plans that go beyond? Hey, we're going to be able to have your servers up and running in the cloud in 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours, whatever it is. Do you go beyond that today, or are you looking at that, or is that a potential growth area for your business?
That is, for us, a potential growth area. That's where the BCP and business continuity planning would hopefully become capital letters in our practice, because that's just a new way to have more share of the client's wallet. I mean, it's easier to go to your existing clients and offer new services they need. You know, this is not something they don't need. And we're always taking this into account in the back end, but are we sitting down and helping our clients put together an actual business continuity plan? Typically no, unless they're in a compliance industry like medical, where they have risk assessments that they have to go through that ask them if they have a defined policy. And of course the only correct answer is yes, so they usually start defining these policies at that time. Otherwise, most small businesses don't have a requirement to do that. Doesn't mean it's not important to them. It just means that they're not being required by statute or by industry standards to do such a thing. So we try to get in deep conversations with them about business continuity, but the actual business continuity planning aspect of our business is something we're hoping to start rolling out towards the second half of 2016.
Right, and I guess I would just make an observation. It's the one thing that I think a lot of folks in the called the MSP space today, we don't spend enough time talking about the human dimension of business continuity. And let me just kind of make an observation. I mean, I think we probably one of the biggest tests of eFolder's whole service suite was when Superstorm Sandy hit the New York tri-state area. And I mean, we virtualized, scores or hundreds of servers, and the funny thing is a lot of our MSP partners in that market really came back to us and kind of confessed that we only really had half the situation covered. That it was really the human dimension to continuity was totally inadequately covered by the business owners. I mean, so we, in many cases, so the biggest impact from Superstorm Sandy was not necessarily flooding or fires. I mean, there were those, but it was really the massive power outage that brought huge parts of New Jersey offline for weeks on end. And what a lot of our MSP partners told us was that it was the human dimension that a lot of business owners hadn't planned for. So there were cases where the headquarters was offline, we had virtualized their servers in the eFolder Continuity Cloud, but they had no plan of where the workforce was supposed to gather. So no even documented plan to, hey, we'll meet at this Marriott hotel at this location if it's got power to huddle and have business meetings, or we'll go to this Regis Business Center to work for a couple weeks when, until the office is back in power. No thought to, your employees, when there's a disaster, people have a whole host of new family commitments. And there was one business owner or MSP business owner said, he was dealing in his own business with the realities of, he had employees saying, look, I can't come in because I've got to go drive 40 minutes to get medicine for my grandmother who's in a part of New Jersey that's out of power and can't get her normal prescription. So it's just kind of the whole human dimension and the employee productivity dimension wasn't adequately thought through by a lot of folks who were impacted by the outage.
Yeah, that's true on a personal level too. Many of us don't have a plan to gather, where would we meet if there was some sort of major disaster in the nearest metropolitan area and it, took out all the communications. What if we can't text or call each other on cell phones? Is there a rendezvous point? Most of us don't think of that, and our government is helpful in that regard. They have set up ready.gov to start helping people do some planning, whether it's on a business or personal level. But it's true, most of our clients haven't thought through how would they even contact all of their employees, and how, where would they set up shop? I guess it depends on the disaster, but can we set it up in such a way that they could, if they're in Chicago and there's a disaster, could they all go to Dubuque and rent a hotel meeting room space and set up the necessary telephony and get the computers set up to access the remote servers? They haven't thought of all that, but trust me, I have, and I have that contingency plan already in mind. We just haven't sat down and formalized it with the client and put it on paper.
And then you've done some investigations on what it would take kind of to take business continuity planning to kind of another level with your clients. I mean, what is involved there in terms of kind of certifications and readiness and training you would have to put your own staff through? what's involved in taking that to the next level?
Well, as far as certifications and training, this is something we do anticipate pursuing, and there are some great business continuity planning groups out there. They have great conferences. There's some trade magazines that go around. Very, very informative. We haven't done it yet as a company, so most of this, like most small businesses, certain aspects of the business are still firmly glued in the owner's head and need to come out. But the tips and tricks, the biggest tip and trick I would give all of us as MSPs is get everything you can into the cloud. If you have a client with an old Nortel phone system with a PRI, you don't have business continuity for that client. I mean, yes, you might be able to do some sort of remote call forwarding from the phone provider, but if they're all on Polycoms with one of the big vendors like RingCentral, well, they've all got their extensions on their hips already. I mean, it doesn't matter where they go. They're going to keep receiving calls. In fact, the phone system's going to keep working because that's somewhere in the cloud anyway, and it's going to email them their voicemails and things like that. So get your voice systems in the cloud. If you're running Exchange on-premise for your clients, you're doing them a disservice by not taking them to Office 365 or Google Apps or one of the cloud providers of your choice, because, again, that service should not be unavailable because of a local disaster. The cloud data centers that host that are all hardened and fed by multiple power loops and multiple IP connections, and they've got redundancy to a science in those places. So start leaning on the people who have done business continuity planning and put your client's data in the cloud wherever you can. And of course that leads directly into backup. You cannot have backups in one location. You have to have backups locally and in the cloud. And you have to have a mechanism to spin those guys up in the cloud should their data centers go down, like you did during Sandy with all of your clients. This is perfect. There's no reason a client has to go out of business because of a disaster.
Right, and then, but how do you, and Becky asked a question, do you have hybrid clients, some services in the cloud and some on-prem?
Of course. We still have, I think, 3 or 4 clients that are left on Exchange. And then we've only recently started doing hosted PBX, so we have a number of clients that still are on on-prem phone systems. So as part of the business continuity plan, we are having that conversation about getting them off of their local Exchange servers and into the cloud, and off of their old aging phone systems, often for less money, and putting that phone system in the cloud, saving them a bundle and earning some nice recurring residuals, and everybody's winning at that point. Your client's getting great service and they're getting business continuity, and you're earning a residual and some project fees.
Mm-hmm. And then if we kind of turn our attention to, so you haven't gone to the BCP kind of formal capitalized approach, but when you document a plan, it sounds like today you are documenting some things with your client around business continuity, in addition to putting in place all the services and infrastructure they need to have resiliency. Can you talk a little bit about what your current documented plan or checklist looks like?
Well, what you're seeing here is a bit of a synopsis. I had to shorten things down quite a bit because each of these bullet points could have pages of data associated with them. But the first thing is to identify the risks. What could possibly happen to this client? And they haven't thought about this. I'm somewhat in Tornado Alley in the Chicago area. The folks that are on either coast understand the possibility of, on the East Coast for sure, of hurricanes like Sandy, and the folks in Florida are intimately aware of that, whereas the people on the West Coast are aware of the possibility of a major disruption from an earthquake or wildfires. Just some of the things that have been going on out west in this past few months have been really devastating. So some of the folks are thinking about it. A lot of the folks in the Midwest are not, because the tornado season kind of comes and goes, and it's very, very localized when it does happen. So we have to expose them to all of the possibilities, crazy things like a rail disaster or the possibility of terrorism. Unfortunately, that's becoming more of an issue. And then ask all those business owners in Ferguson or Baltimore what it's like to try to run a company in the midst of essentially a police state when there's so much civil unrest that nothing can be done. In fact, your business might not be there when you go back to look for it. So people haven't thought of that, and it's important to have a checklist. And you can Google this and find great sample business continuity plans. And of course, ready.gov has some great resources in this regard too. And then make sure that they understand the impact. What would any of these disasters do to my company, and what can I do to mitigate the risk in each area? So, be proactive and have a lot of solutions to all of those problems, and be able to check off all of these bullet points with your clients, without having to fight. And then start working with them to develop their plan. Now again, this is very much a thumbnail sketch of what a true business continuity plan looks like. But last but not least, test it. If you have your data in eFolder's cloud, at some point in the future, plan a day with your client to test it. It's a great way of gaining your client's confidence that none of their previous providers did such a thing, and now suddenly you're able to spin up their server and let them log on to it. Testing a plan is just, that makes for one very sticky client.
Right, and I think what you can say is, you could, this business continuity plan could be 50 pages long or 5 pages long, but I think what you can say, I think in the SMB market, say up to about 100 employees, you can pretty much guarantee that you are one of the only people who's had this conversation with the business principal in depth, and that's really what can substantially differentiate you, with your clients, and create that kind of sticky relationship, where you're looking out not just for their quote unquote IT, but you're looking out for their livelihoods and their productivity, and that's kind of the key to taking that relationship to a higher level, I think.
Yeah, your favorite 6-syllable word should be differentiation. You need to set yourself apart, because every time you're out there bidding, chances are you're bidding against 2 or 3 other people. So not only do you have to have great products and services, but you have to impress. And one way to impress is to be thinking of everything where the other guys are only thinking about making a sale.
That's right, and I think that part of the result of that will be higher profits. Can you talk about how the kinds of profits you see on a recurring basis in your managed service offerings?
Yeah, the managed service offering is typically a gross profit in the 50 to 60% range. The BDR product is even more so. When we settled on Veeam, we became a Microsoft SPLA partner, so we buy the server OS through SPLA. We purchase the server hardware and provide it to our clients so that it's just part of their monthly service fee. They're not experience a big outlay at the outset. And then we partnered with Veeam's Cloud Service Provider program. So all told, to back up a single VM with all of the software and the offsite cloud from eFolder, it might only be $50 or $60 a month, depending on the deal you make with eFolder. But the sale price on that could easily be 3 times that. 2 to 3 times for sure. So there are lots of margins to be made here. Now, of course, you're earning that margin by caring about it, and your clients are paying you to care, and you have to be sure, and you have to be able to deliver a service that doesn't cause you to stay awake nights. You need to know for a fact that it works, and that's why we love this solution, because it's been absolutely bulletproof. So, the risk is a big chunk of that percentage profit, and reducing that risk by choosing wisely is a great way to increase your profits.
Right, and by standardizing it and making sure your techs and your team is completely well trained and that you've got a repeatable process, it allows you to kind of spread that expertise over more clients, and then you're able to really get that recurring revenue at a high gross margin without the recurring work or being eaten alive on labor, and that's how you mitigate that risk that you're taking on in exchange and get the profit. So can you talk a little bit about, Becky just wants to know kind of what do you target in terms of your net profitability? Do you have a point of where you are today and where you want to go in terms of net profitability?
Net profit as a term, as opposed to gross profit, we are just now in the process of fully understanding how to calculate that. So Becky, I'm sorry, I don't have a great answer for you for that question for you. I've recently joined a peer group where we have some great analytics, and we're meeting twice a year and learning how to really understand our numbers. So that's one of the reasons we haven't launched our outbound marketing effort yet, because we don't fully have the grasp. So I'm sorry I can't be real specific on that point, because those are some of the answers I don't have. I'm very busy shedding the various hats that I wear, and that's one thing all of us as business owners need to do. Define all the roles in your company, figure out how many of them you're currently holding, and then start delegating and getting rid of them so that you can be on top of your financials. So guilty as charged on that one.
Well, Steve, tell me this. So what peer group did you just join?
The peer group I've joined is Baring McKinley, not very dissimilar from Taylor Business Groups and a few others out there. Any or all of them would be great. I'm pretty fond of the one that I'm in. I've met a great bunch of guys, and you know, the conferences that we have twice a year are fantastic, and I get challenged. But more so, I get challenged to run my business according to a plan and to know where I stand at any given time. And you know, I'm about 6 months into that process now, and I strongly encourage everyone out there to join a proper peer group. It's okay to have some peers that you meet up with occasionally, but join one of the ones that actually teaches you to drill down into your numbers and understand profitability.
Yeah, and I think that's the you know, we're pretty familiar with the process that service leadership injects into kind of the HTG peer group process, and I think that's one thing that's another. I mean, that's one of the areas where there's a huge aha moment for a lot of MSP business owners when, I mean, the key thing is standardizing the chart of accounts so that you can benchmark against other peers, because everybody could put, you know, this expense and or this labor component or this software tool in kind of a different bucket, and until you have it standardized, it's kind of, you don't really have an apples to apples type comparison. So that's one big part of making those productive conversations, is standardizing and then doing the benchmarking exercises. So
that's where we stand. We've been working on getting that chart of accounts cleaned up, getting technician labor in the cost of goods sold, and really, you know, all of that discipline that your accountant may or may not be asking you to do. Well, that peer group leader is going to make you do it, and they're going to show you the analytics once you're done to help you understand where you measure up in accordance with your peers in the group. And it's kind of fun to be that guy that's near the top or at the top because you've been disciplined. And if there's one thing all of us need as MSPs, we need a little bit of business discipline.
That's right. So with that, I think I don't see any other questions in our Q&A log. Let me just, before I do some thank yous here, just for Steve's insights, I just want to make a plug for a resource that eFolder makes available to our partners, and it's called a Business Continuity Playbook. So we talked earlier about, you know, how to go out there and find new clients. I think what you'll find when you're out marketing, when you're out hunting for new clients, business continuity, downtime, you know, people losing productivity because things break and they don't get fixed timely, or somebody's prior service provider didn't respond in timely fashion. Those are the areas where there's a lot of business owners out there that have a lot of pain. And so, you know, having that conversation, probing that pain point is an area where you will drudge up a lot of demand and interest. And one of the tools eFolder makes available to our partners is our business continuity playbook, and this is a toolkit that contains canned emails, white papers, brochures, PowerPoint presentations, all in soft copy format, in very conventional file formats, which can allow you to, you know, basically, you know, put your own brand name on it, put it into your own layout, you know, use those copy points yourself, completely free of charge, with complete, you know, free license to go do that, just to help. And this is a way we help our partners go out there and drive more demand. So we will be sending out copies of the playbook to everybody who attended today's session. And with that, let me just kind of wrap up. And Steve, thank you very much for your insights on today's discussion.
You're welcome. I welcome the opportunity, and you know, I really do enjoy interacting with my peers out there, even when I can't hear them. They can hear me, but this is a great business, and we all are in it together. So, you know, join a peer group, share your experiences, and grow, and deliver great solutions.
Okay, well, some thanks are coming through on the Q&A log. So if you want to look Steve up, Steve Thom, Tom Infotech from the Chicago market. Great discussion today. We're going to be signing off here on time for everybody to get you back to your day. This is Ted Hulsy with the eFolder Partner Chat Series. I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and take care.